This video is Fieldcraft. It's going to be on Viet Cong fishing attack tactics. Now I came across this when I was looking for reports and books and pamphlets on lessons learned from Vietnam. I came across a report that was archived by the U.S. Army that was written by a Taiwanese Army officer who was going through the reports in the 1960s, trying to figure out what were the Viet Cong's most common tactics that potentially they could copy to use against an invasion by the People's Liberation Army. And this, at least at that time, was their most common tactic that they did when they were doing raids. And this person broke it down really scientifically and that stuff, and it was a pain, but I'll explain it as best I can here. So what we have essentially is one, maybe two or three regiments of soldiers. And remember, their units were smaller than comparable U.S. ones. So a regiment is really closer to a U.S. battalion in strength. So we have an attack going on the outpost, which is meant to cause the defenders to believe that they're going to be overwhelmed, call for reinforcements. You have other elements of the regiments or regiment along the road leading to the outpost. Their job is to ambush the reinforcements. Now, there's two main intents here on how this tactic varied on what the main focus of this raid, this attack was. First intent is block reinforcement, strike point. If the outpost is the main focus, it is probed, breached, and wiped out. The reinforcements are ambushed and stopped by heavy defenses and obstacles along the way. So this is the main focus up here. We'd have the bulk of the forces up here, say about 1/3 of it would be down here on the ambushes. These guys up here are trying to get in and wipe this out before the reinforcements even get close, so that the units up here can strip needed equipment and supplies from this outpost. Now, the reinforcement column is coming up the road. They're going to be hit by multiple ambushes. And it said in this report that reinforcement columns are repeatedly ambushed and cut into pieces. The easiest sections are wiped out. After each ambush is complete, because the reinforcements have gone past it or they've wiped out their section, that part of the ambush pulls back, turns over whatever they captured if they took anything, and then repositions farther up the road to get ready for their next ambush. Any engineer support in this operation was helping out back in here by putting in improvised explosive devices and setting up obstacles. These obstacles could be getting ready to blow a road crater directly in front of the column as they're approaching. Or maybe it's as the column's approaching, they're looking at the road up ahead, they get closer, and all of a sudden the trees start blowing next to them. The trees are falling across the road into an abattis obstacle. Or potentially they brought some really long logs out there, laid them across the roads, going from trees on this side to trees on this side, with those trees being the posts as they just kept stacking log and log and log and log into there, creating the obstacle. Whatever they came up with, whatever they had the materials for. The task of these guys down here is to slow them from reinforcing the outpost before it is wiped out by the main force. Obviously, the engineers that are up here on the outpost, their main task is to get through the mines and the wire so that the infantry could get into the trenches and the defenses on the perimeter, take them out, and then follow-on infantry keep pouring through to take care of more people inside the outpost. When this was done against a fire base, you were talking regimentals in size. If this was being done against a small outpost, say on a town or something like that, or a police station, you may be looking at, say, a company or two attacking that outpost. Next intent, encircle point, strike reinforcements. If reinforcements is main focus, the outpost is contained, attacked repeatedly, while the main force hits and wipes out the reinforcements before they reach the outpost. So in this one, we have 1/3 of the force is hitting the outpost. And they're hitting them hard. They're making it look like they are a larger force than they are. Sending in those rockets, the mortars, everything to keep those defenders up here freaking out, not realizing that they're the ruse. That the main focus is to take out the reinforcements. So then the other 2/3 of the unit are down here, spread out on ambush points. Using essentially Finnish multi-tactics, cutting that reinforcement column into pieces, into sections, containing each section, and then taking them out one by one by one by one, wiping them out. There are reports from Vietnam of the Viet Cong doing this and wiping out entire battalions of reinforcement troops coming up with tanks, with armored personnel carriers, with tracked anti-aircraft vehicles to use their heavy machine guns, those 40 millimeters or whatever they particularly have, to take them out as they're coming up. They would wipe that column out. Then strip them of everything they possibly could. They'd strip the unfired tank rounds from inside the tanks, hide those in the jungle, strip the machine guns off, all the ammunition. They'd strip the tools, you know, the uniforms off the troops, everything and anything. And then before they would leave, the vehicles that are left, blow them up, burn them. A few times, and you'll come across this, you read this sometimes in Vietnam histories, they would maybe steal one of those tanks, one of those APCs, literally take it into the jungle somewhere and hide it in a giant hole in the ground, cover it with logs, and camouflage it like it's not even there. And then a Viet Cong soldier would come through every once in a while through a secret entrance just to check on it to make sure it's in decent shape and potentially could be used later for when they did their big liberation of the South, quote unquote. But there you go. That's a quick, dirty breakdown of Viet Cong fishing attack tactics. Now remember, before this operation happened, the Viet Cong always spent a huge amount of time learning every bit of information they could on the enemy. Everything on the outpost, what's the reaction time for reinforcements, how large would the reinforcements be, what likely would be the equipment used in that reinforcement. Every piece of information, down to when guard shifts typically changed, what times, how long were the guard shifts, where did the troops spend most of their time during the different times a day, where's the sleeping areas, the eating areas, everything. They got every single detail they could, and they would make extremely thorough maps of the outposts, down to showing where individual mines were on their anticipated breach points, so that as the sappers would go through, they would know, hey, I got a mine 2 feet above me above my left shoulder. Get up there, neutralize the mine, and know that, hey, the next mine is to my right, in front of me about 2 meters, and it'll be 18 inches off to my side. And they would go through like that, clearing their path as they're going through. There you go, some history for you, some things to think about. I will try to look through that report more, see how much more information I can glean on tactics that were common for them, especially early in the war. Now, for all my engineer brothers in the Patriot and militia movements, always remember SA Arms.